Hello, people from around the universe! I am your host, the Italian Ace, and welcome to my newest channel that will cover everything fairy tale related. Plus potentially some other anime stuff, but we'll get there if and when we get there. Anyway, as this is my first video on this channel, I thought it would be a pretty good idea to start off with probably the most relevant topic that has to do with fairy tale. And that is, of course, the 100 Years Quest arc that is currently going on in the manga. Now, I debated many ways to go about covering this arc, and I think I've landed on doing this 3 volumes at a time, because, well, doing all 9 volumes at once would make for a very long video, and also 3 volume intervals actually works pretty well with the story, as you will find out with, well, I guess this video and the upcoming ones. I will also try to split the video into 2 parts, the first being kind of a general overview of what I think about the current volumes and how they stack up with the rest of Fairy Tail. And this part I will keep mostly spoiler-free to the best of my abilities. And then the next part will be going into more of the details and events of those volumes and discussing how I feel about each of them. But I think this is a pretty good idea, as not everyone has read the manga, and I'm pretty sure some people don't really want to be spoiled for the upcoming anime. So, I think this will work for the best, but if it doesn't, you can let me know and we'll figure something else out for the next video. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough, so let's get to the first 3 volumes of Fairy Tail's 100 Years Quest. But before that, cue my intro. Now, before we really dive into the first 3 volumes, let's briefly talk about the anime coming back, as I think not everyone is aware that it is actually scheduled to be coming back this year around July. I don't think there's an official release date as of yet, but sometime around July 2022 seems to be the general consensus. So I think that's pretty exciting, and if you didn't know that, now you do. But now, let's start talking about the 100 Years Quest. And for those of you who don't know, this is something that has been built up throughout, I want to say, almost all of Fairy Tail, as I think the first mention of it comes around when they're doing the S-Class Wizard test and we first meet Gildarts. I could be wrong, but it's somewhere around there, which would be before the 7-year time skip. And so that's pretty early on in the series, which means this is an arc that has a lot of build-up behind it. So the question naturally is, does it live up to that build-up? And in my opinion, the answer is yeah, it definitely does. First of all, they set up the concept of the 100 Years Quest very well, explaining both why it's called that and telling you what the objective is. And then they also have a secondary plot line that starts being developed right from the first volume, which is actually a very interesting one, but only later. It's hard to say without going into even more spoilers that actually have to do with like the later volumes, but the secondary plot line to the 100 Years Quest, which in a way almost becomes part of the main one towards the end of these volumes that have released so far, is not as interesting at first, as it kind of reminds me of a kind of more bland version of Zeref's plotline. But then it really starts to pick up steam as it goes along and kind of throws you for a loop at one point, which I actually really enjoyed. And I mean, yes, we're not new to the kind of twist that Fairy Tail has, especially with some of the villains not really being villains or something like that. But the way they do it here is very different, in my opinion. However, this is, again, something that you only really find out, I think, in volume 6, maybe 5 potentially of the manga. So it's not even in the first couple of volumes. And when you first get introduced to it, you might think that, again, it's just dulled down Zeref. But trust me, it picks up later and it's not going to be following along the same footsteps. Although it's not completely different either, so don't expect it to be revolutionizing the way Fairy Tail does things just yet. But going back to the main plot line, that being the actual 100 Years quest, the premise behind it is very good. And again, without going into too many spoilers for this section, basically it's not really a single villain that they're going up against or a single objective, but it's kind of multiple objectives that are tied together. And each, I guess, threat that they have to face has similar but very distinct feels to the other threats in the 100 Years quest, making for a very interesting dynamic. As yes, all of the threats that they're facing share a common background, but none of them really act or function in the same way. Man, it is harder than I thought to not go into spoilers. But anyway, why do I like this so much? Well, I think these first 3 volumes especially deliver on one of Fairy Tail's cornerstone features, and that is getting you to care about the characters. I mean, I think we can all agree when I say that one of Fairy Tail's strongest suits is that they really get you to be invested with the story's characters. Whether it be the protagonist or the antagonist, the villain, the random dude that they meet that one time, usually Fairy Tail is able to get you emotionally invested. And that goes a long way because you want to see what happens to these people. You want to see what they do, and you just want to see if everything goes well for them, or maybe you want to see everything go poorly for them. Regardless, it's one of the best parts about Fairy Tail in general because you care. And these first volumes really deliver on this aspect. I mean, I was immediately hooked back into the Fairy Tail world and the current storyline from basically the first 10 pages. And it just gets more and more interesting as you find out more and more about the new characters and the relationship to some of the existing characters, which are actually very cool to see as they're not altogether different from some of the relationships we've seen in the past, but still have their own flavor to them, if you will. So okay, that's one big plus, and I already talked about how I think it sets up the 100 Years quest concept very well. Does that mean that it's done perfectly? Not quite. Yes, but as much as I would love to sit here and tell you that the first 3 volumes and really all of the volumes so far of the 100 Years quest are pure perfection, of course there's some things that I think they could have done better. Again, the secondary storyline really only gets interesting later on, so when you first get exposed to it, it just kind of causes the whole plot to slow down significantly without much payoff. Now, of course, since it does in fact get better as you go on, and I think by the time you get to volume 7, it's fully integrated with the rest of the story. This is not really too big of an issue, but still, when you're first reading these volumes or seeing the anime episodes when they come out, if you don't know that it's gonna get better, it can feel like they're just trying to rehash the whole Zeref thing, but with a less interesting antagonist. But really, that's my only big problem with the arc so far. And I could sit here and nitpick some of the small details or some scenes that I didn't really like, but I don't really see the point in doing that, because I could also do the opposite and just go over how fantastic some of the moments are, but analyzing every single moment doesn't really get us anywhere, and it would also be impossible to do without spoiling everything. So I think I will stop here with my overview portion of the video, as this is more meant to get you excited about the arc, and I will conclude it by telling you how I think it stacks up against the rest of Fairy Tail so far. So if I had to describe how much I like this arc in terms of other existing arcs in Fairy Tail, well, I would say it's probably somewhere between the Edolas arc and I guess the Phantom Lord one, because I like it more than Edolas, as I think it's overall a more interesting storyline, but I don't think it quite reaches some of the heights of Phantom Lord, which, if you guys don't remember, actually has some insane moments like Gajeel versus Natsu and Fairy Law being used for the first time, so I don't think it gets to those levels of hype yet, but it's still definitely average to maybe above average for the level that we've come to expect from Fairy Tail. And for anyone wondering, this means that I basically love the arc so far, because I basically love all of the Fairy Tail arcs, so even the worst ones are still pretty damn good. But now, for the spoiler section of the video, and this is my warning to you, so if you don't want to be spoiled about anything that has to do with the 100 Years Quest, I guess either stop the video, go get the manga volumes and then come back to it, or wait for the anime to be released and then come back to this. I don't know. Up to you, but you've been warned. Okay, so let's start this off with the concept of the 100 Years Quest, and that is defeating the 5 dragon gods, which when I first heard it, kind of had me scratching my head like, the dragon what now? But going back to what I was saying before, to Fairy Tail's credit, it doesn't really take long to get me invested in this plotline, as they really have interesting characters and personalities set up for these dragon gods, and every new character really that we get introduced to. So while yes, I definitely had the same confused expression that I think a lot of you had when I first found out that the 5 dragon gods were going to be the main bad guys of this arc, I must say they pull it off pretty well, so I have no issue with this concept. Still, not all dragon gods are created equal, and as it turns out, the first one that you meet is actually a nice guy, and that is Mercphobia. So he's pretty interesting, because I think it's actually pretty genius to have him be the first one that you are introduced to, because it kind of gets you into that false mentality that, oh, this is gonna be kind of like Zeref and a lot of the other villains in Fairy Tail, where they have redeemable qualities, or they have some tragic background, or you really can't bring yourself to hate them because they're not really all bad guys, they just have had difficult lives. And while that definitely is more of the direction they take with Mercphobia, actually going even further beyond that and just making him a good guy, that's not what they do with all the other dragon gods, because right as Mercphobia is being driven crazy by a character that we will get to shortly, the dragon god that comes out to help out Natsu is Ignia, the son of Igneel, which I'm still kind of confused about that. Like, did Igneel have a son that he just never mentioned to Natsu? Is this someone that Igneel didn't really know about? Do dragons have kids the same way that we have kids? Like, I don't really know, but Ignia is definitely not along the same lines of, oh, he's just misunderstood, or oh, he's not really a bad guy, because no, he is. He 100% is. Like, I think he's the living embodiment of wanting to watch the world burn. And I do mean that both figuratively and very literally. But those are the only 2 dragon gods that we're introduced to so far, for the most part, except for the names of the other ones, really. And even then, it's mostly just Mercphobia because, well, he's the one that they actually end up battling in these first 3 volumes. And that battle is insane. So, even though, again, it happens because of another character that, don't worry, we're gonna get to, it is a very hype moment, which I think will rival some of the best in Fairy Tail when it gets animated. Because, I don't know about you, but when I was reading through these pages of the manga, I just had like the Fairy Tail battle theme just in my head, and it worked so well. Maybe that's just me, but I figured I would share so that you guys knew where I'm coming from. Anyway, the most interesting part about this battle is that it really takes Natsu kind of going full-on dragon mode to win. And by that I mean that he eats Igneous Flames, gets the power boost that Dragon Slayers do when they eat their element, but then he kind of goes full-on anti-hero, if not almost borderline villain, because he doesn't really seem to listen to reason for a couple minutes there. And until Lucy calms him down in a scene that's reminiscent of Katara calming Aang down after Appa gets taken away, Natsu is just kind of wailing on Mercphobia's now still body, and it's pretty jarring to see when we all know that he's usually very good-natured. But anyway, that was the most interesting part of the battle, and maybe the first 3 volumes in general, as I'm pretty sure we're going to see this more animalistic version of Natsu being brought back. But it's not the only key moment in these first 3 volumes. First of all, the city that they battle Mercphobia in is basically a city of humans that worship Mercphobia as their god, but because of his powers, the city gets flooded, and so he gave them the ability to turn to fish, causing them to actually now think that they're fish that can turn into people, which is just the kind of crazy, wacky plotline that I would expect from Fairy Tail, and I mean this in the best possible way. There's also Ignea being introduced, which will definitely be a bigger deal for later on than any of the other dragons' introduction, as I think we can all guess he will be the main threat that they have to face out of the dragon gods because he's Igneo's son and Natsu's the protagonist. But the introduction of Mercphobia is also very cool, and I actually just like how he's just this very chill guy who, yeah, he's super strong, but he doesn't care. He just wants to live peacefully with the people that he actually really cares about and wants to protect. Just nice. No, nice change of pace from some of the antagonists we've had in the series so far. And of course, don't think I forgot about the whole secondary plot line that I was mentioning earlier, and that is the one driven by Toka / the White Mage. And actually, we will find out later that that's not even her name, but that's okay. That's not even in the first 3 volumes, so we'll get there when we get there. So again, I don't think this plotline is done particularly well at the beginning, as she really does feel like watered down Zeref, like I said before. And my reasoning behind saying that is that, oh look, it's another really strong wizard, in this case, witch or mage, and oh no, she can't always control her personality. Oh my gosh, what's gonna happen? Again, very reminiscent of Zeref. But that's only for the beginning of it, and once you really find out more about this character, she becomes a lot more interesting. So I don't really want to harp on this too much, because that would be kind of a disservice to the plotline. But I can't also just ignore it when it doesn't super work in a fluid manner for the first 3 volumes. Still, even in these first 3 volumes, while I don't really care about her as a character yet, she does have some pretty big implications for the rest of the plot. The main one being that she's the reason Mercphobia even starts going crazy and attacking everyone, because she stole his power, or more accurately, his control over his power. And I thought that was already a very interesting spin on this white mage concept, which is basically taking away people's magic, because she doesn't really take away their magic as much as she takes away their control of it and gains that control herself. So while it may sound similar, I think it's still a different enough concept that it deserves to be specified, I guess. One last thing that I do want to mention is that while they're on their way to face a second dragon god, Alderon, the wood one, which I guess I didn't even mention Mercphobia is the water one. Okay, sorry. Mercphobia is the water one, Ignia is the fire one, and Alderon is the wood one. But anyway, as they're on their way to Alderon City, they meet another set of doppelgangers for Fairy Tail. But this is like people who work in the entertainment industry, so you have actors and like strippers and directors and anything that you can think of, and I just think it's hilarious because like it comes out of nowhere and it's just like, yes, this is clearly just a normal everyday occurrence. We have another set of duplicates basically of your whole guild, but for an entertainment guild in this case. Like, again, just exactly the type of craziness that I would expect from Fairy Tail, and I love it. Also, it does set up something for the later volumes, so it's not just there for fun. I think, unless they didn't think that far ahead, but I'm pretty sure they did, so I'm gonna go ahead and say that this had a purpose other than entertaining us. And honestly, even if it didn't, this is still hilarious to see them. Like, the Juvia doppelganger is even funnier than the Edwall's counterpart, where they switch personalities basically between her and Gray, because here she's just kind of like, yeah, me and like your doppelganger talking to Gray, yeah, we're together, but I'm not really gonna tell you that, and I'm gonna pretend to kind of go out on a date with you to get you to realize that you also like Juvia, which is a very interesting way to get Gray to fully process his feelings for Juvia. And even then, it takes more time than just these couple volumes. But it does start to set up a more balanced relationship between him and Juvia, which I actually enjoy, as I think it's good that they're showing character growth for everyone. Anyway, I think that will do it for us here for now. And don't worry, I'll be back with volumes 4 through 7 soon, I think. And let me know if you enjoyed this type of video, where again I kind of go over the general ideas behind that part of the arc and how I feel about that part of the arc, and then go into the details. Or if you just prefer me to go into the details from the beginning, and if people want to be spoiled, they'll be spoiled, and if they don't, they'll just come back later when they already know. But I do hope you enjoyed this video. Do let me know if you have any suggestions about what you would want to see in this channel, because while I have a lot of ideas for it, who better to give me suggestions for content than the people that are going to be watching said content, right? Anyway, if you want to see the rest of the 100 Years Quest arc, or just more Fairy Tail content, then I do recommend subscribing, as I'm going to be covering all of that in the near future. And of course, I hope to see you all in the next video. But until then, remember to follow the way of the ace. See ya!